All right, I don't know if you heard. I think we're recording. I think we're live. Good morning, dear friends. Today is Wednesday, the 13th of Tammuz, June 23rd, and we are studying, but for a shorter period than usual, the entire Talmud, one page, one line at a time, presently studying Maseches Shabbos, chapter 6. We are on 58A, Nun Ches Amud Aleph, and we're talking all about the kind of gear that a person might be allowed to wear on Shabbos. Presently, the primary discussion has been about the garments, at least the Mishnah was about garments that women can wear. We've pivoted to other discussions as we've discussed different items that are enumerated in the Mishnah. We've discussed other scenarios where they might be worn. So we talked about these badges or seals or stamps that indicate affiliation. It might be a slave's affiliation to his master. It might be rabbis showing support for their patron. There also might be on animals. We then spoke about bells. Bells are also something that is up for discussion. Can you wear a bell? Can you not wear a bell? Is a bell about making music? Reb Allen had a question. I didn't get a chance to fully explore it. It's not quite so simple. But what I can tell you is that certainly a bell clanging is not as a person walks is not necessarily the same as making music. Just let's put that on the side. And we are now up to a discussion that is on Nun Ches. Might be even Amud Beis. Let's see. It is Nun Ches Amud Beis. We were talking about bells. We're talking about bells for the purposes of Tumah, and we ended off yesterday talking about the distinction between a bell being an accessory and a bell being a tool, a keli. We're now going to talk about a little more about a bell and the value of a bell if it cannot make noise. So let us see this next part of Gemara, still discussing bells. And again, we've got some singing in the background. That's from the bris, and we're celebrating Yud Gimel Tammuz. We'll do our best. At least we'll try to get in a few lines. We can't go a day without learning Gemara, and we'll dedicate today's learning to our new member of our community who now has a name. His name is Yaakov Rifael Menachem. 3 names, each would be powerful on their own, and all 3 together represent the latest member of our community. And so we'll dedicate today's learning in his honor, and we should always have simchas to share and good occasions for the community and for all of Klal Yisrael. Now, here we go. Our Mishnah talks about bells. For some reason, they scooted me back to where we started. The Mishnah talks about bells being impure and pure, and it says that even if the inbal, if the tongue, if the clapper is removed, it remains impure. The Gemara is going to discuss that a little further. Amar Ratmar. We previously quoted from the Tosefta, and we're going to review it again. Nitlu in belehem. You have a bell. It became impure, and then it lost its clapper. So does it become ois bell? Does it lose its status as a keli? And therefore does it become pure, or does it remain a bell as it was prior? That's the question, and here's the answer. Adayin tumasan alehem. It remains impure. It remains impure. It remains considered a bell. The Gemara wonders, hold on, what good is a bell that doesn't ring? I think there's even a, how does it go? Isn't there a nursery rhyme or a song that talks about a bell that doesn't ring? If the bell doesn't ring,
too far back for me.
it's not a nursery rhyme. It's a song. It's like one of these child's ditties, if you will. All right, we'll remember it eventually. It's not relevant for our Gemara. But anyways, if that
most famous phrase is, "Do not ask for whom the bell tolls; it tolls for you."
But if the bell does not ring, what good of a bell? What kind of bell is it at all? Amar Abaye explains, it's not a very complicated procedure to rebellify, to reattach the inbal to the bell. And therefore, although it's technically missing a piece, we're not going to consider it game over for the bell. Rashi says, who is a hedyot? She'ein tzarich uman. You don't need to go to the bell repair shop to fix your bell. You take the inbal and you weave it back in, and it's a bell.
Rebellify. I like that term.
It's from the psychology world.
Right. So if you're a Belza chassid and you go off the derech and you want to bring it back derech, you have to rebellicize it. Right. I got it.
All right. Masiv Rava has a challenge to our understanding that a bell can be easily repaired and therefore remains impure. Because let's look at Rabbi Steinsaltz. He makes a nice explanation. According to Abaya, any vessel that comes apart, if a regular person, a hedyot, can reassemble it, it doesn't need a mumche, a professional. It's not really considered broken, and because it's not broken, it remains impure. But is that so, that a broken bell remains impure? Rashi, the Gemara asks, Masiv Rava challenged. We're taught that Hazug v'ha'inbal chibor, the relationship between a bell and its clapper is that it is connected. Rashi, kishehein yachad harein kli echad. When a bell is fused with its clapper, it's considered one vessel. Nitmazeh. If an impure item touches the clapper, the bell becomes impure, and vice versa. Hiza al-zeh tohar-zeh. And if you sprinkle the waters of purification on one, the other becomes pure. But kivan the karle chibor, being that halachically they are considered one unified piece. Shmamino dechinis pardu have a klisha nitel miksasai. When the two parts come apart, it's like a keli that's missing part of its essential design. And even though it can be repaired, Rashi elaborates nicely and long in this explanation that as long as the inbal is not there, it would be considered a broken vessel. So again, is a bell without an inbal a bell at all? Sounds like a deep question. So the Gemara continues. The chitema, maybe you'll explain the Gemara as follows. What does it mean that it's chibor hachikama? Afagav the lo mechaber, even though it's not attached. Kiman de mechaber dami, it's as if it is still attached. Rashi, the high chibor v'kamar hachikama. Afilu mifuroden karino lechibor. Even when they are apart, they're still together. That sounds like a very romantic statement, and maybe that's what we understand about the bell.
Maybe they're saying
that
it has the potential to be fixed.
If you have a kit that has a bell and an inbal, even if they're not attached, we consider as if it's one unit. We consider as if it is one item. Maybe that's what you're going to say. That doesn't work, because we were taught about scissors in our Gemara. Earlier on in the Masechta, last chapter, we read a brisa that was quoted to us that says, Mispores shel prakim, a scissors that's of two components, two parts. Today, most scissors we find in the store are a single or two attached blades. But once upon a time, maybe you would put the two pieces together to cut, and then you take it apart and put it back in the case. Maybe. And that's what a Mispores shel prakim is. Or the Ismail shel rehitne, a carpenter has a plane to smooth wood, and there's a blade. Remember, we discussed this a few weeks back. And the brisa tells us, chibur letuma ve'ein chibur lehaza. It's considered attached in that they become impure one another, but not considered connected for the purposes of purification. And the Gemara explained the following process. Again, this should be a refresher. Most of us saw this. And the Gemara asked earlier on, either it's connected or it's not. Rabba clarified. Again, this is all one big run-on sentence. That's why I'm reading like this. Rabba explains, Dvar Torah, biblically, when it's actually being used and it's together, it's considered utterly connected. Shaloi b'shas melacha, Reb Pesach, they did benching and the harachamans. Okay, good. No, I'm on the shir, so I just wanted to make sure. Shkoyach. Mazel tov. Shaloi b'shas melacha, when we're not using the scissors, we don't consider it attached at all. It goes through, and the Chachamim made a gezerah, which put together this slightly complicated picture. Goes through al-tuma shaloi b'shas malacha, mishum tum b'shas malacha. When two pieces of a tool are not being used, but they are together, we consider it impure rabbinically because we're afraid people will confuse during function, not during function. And we do not allow sprinkling of purification to work, even when it's being used, lest you mistakenly think that the connection could also work.
There was a bris this morning.
So let me just explain to what our Gemara just did. Do you think that we could consider a vessel that has two parts attached, even when it's not attached? No way. Even scissors that are attached, or a carpenter's plane that is attached. Shaloi b'shas melacha, when it's not being used, we look at it as if it is detached. Obviously, two things that are literally detached cannot be considered whole. It's considered broken. So why now would we consider a bell that lost its tongue a keli? Amar Rava. Rava explains, what good is a bell that doesn't ring? We've now turned the page to Nun Tes Amud Aleph. My dear friends, we've been making wonderful ground these last few days. There is another use. There's something else that a bell can do. You know what it can do? You can bang your bell on cheres, on earthenware, and it'll make the same sound as I need to see your faces. So again, a bell without a clapper ostensibly can't make noise, but it can make noise if there's something else to bang into it. And apparently once upon a time, it wasn't unheard of that you might have a inbell-less bell, a debellified, what was the word we used? Debellified?
Yeah.
It lost its bell, and yet it was still had a function. When you were by a simcha and you wanted to talk, you didn't have glassware, so you couldn't clean your glass with a spoon, but you would bang on your bell, and it would get everyone's attention. Let's say, Rashi, what happens when you bang onto a bell on a bell without a tongue, without an imbal? It makes a familiar bell-like sound. And therefore, a bell without an inbal can still operate as a bell. And it's like a dish, a cup, that has a small kind of hole, which is not large enough to disqualify that vessel. The a vessel, a keli with a small hole can still be considered a keli, a vessel for the purposes of all the halachas of what a keli is and is. Now the whole Gemara actually makes sense. Because the Masnisa and Kamaisa, the lav manahu, the inbal tama, the inbal maslila, mana of the adam gadol apala inbal tama. And we said earlier in the Gemara that sometimes a bell without its inbal is considered a keli. The latachshatu, and then we said it's because it is an adornment. The loyvay inbal. Why would a bell not need a bell, a tongue? Simply because either it's for fashion, or it is functional, not as a standalone thing, but to smash into something else to make that noise. All right, whatever. It's a long Rashi, but the point stands. It's Marnami, indeed. We've been taught about a tongueless bell. We've been taught, Amar Rav Yossi, Rav Chanina taught, a bell without a tongue is still functionally a bell because you could bang it on cheres. Rabbi Yochanan Boy, Mayim Latinik. Rabbi Yochanan had a very interesting thing. Dr. Hammer created fixedness, correct? What is a bell? Is a bell a noisemaker? It might be, but when you can eliminate the inbal, you know what it's good for? To say l'chaim, to give a child a little sip. That, I think, would be a classic instance of functional, what was the word? Functional fixedness. I think this would be a perfect example.
Yeah.
So again, a bell without a tongue, either you can make noise with it, or you could give a child to drink. Again, if Hasidim were in, they'd say l'chaim. The Rabbi Yochanan. Okay, period. Now the Gemara is going to get a little more into the weeds of functional fixedness. Rabbi Yochanan says that the bell can be used for a drink. Really? Rabbi Yochanan, surely Rabbi Yochanan would agree that for a keli to be considered yet functional, it should have to be able to be used in a similar manner to its original function. Reisha dekra, basically, there's a limud in the original verse that teaches us about the laws of purity, that the original vessel should have to be somewhat identical to its original use. Vatanya, the Brisa will make this point. In the discussion about the laws of purity, it says, a vessel that was sat upon by an impure person becomes impure. Maybe this would even count if a big vessel was placed on top of it. Or if you turned upon it a slightly smaller but also massive vessel on top of it, so you're actually not sitting on the vessel itself. Talmud loymar asher yeshiv olav hazav mishem yuchad liyeshiva. Basically, long story short, the vessel has to be used in something akin to its original use. So let's read Rabbi Steinsaltz just because we're short for time. In that case, because a vessel is used for purposes that are not sitting, it shouldn't become impure if a zav just sat on it. So therefore, what kind of vessel can become ritually impure by a zav? Something that's in its common function. And Rabbi Lazar says, when it comes to something that becomes impure by sitting, being on top of it, we say we will yet use it for its function. But we do not give this waiver when it comes to a tumas mes. In other words, a vessel is only considered being used when it's being used for its primary function. In other words, the Gemara is saying that Rabbi Yochanan is of the opinion that we do not have such a broad concept of functional fixedness. Rabbi Yochanan is saying you can use something for something in the ballpark of its original use. But if the item breaks, even though there might be a second use, it's not considered a keli. The function of a kli is its common function. So you have certain kelim that have a wide variety of use, and that's what's on their original packaging when you go to the store. Obviously, then, any of those functions is considered its function, and it can become impure if being used in the manner that it is typically used. But there are certain kinds of items that have a very precise use. For example, no one is going to go to Walmart and buy a bell because they need to say l'chaim. For that, you'll go to the paper goods store and buy l'chaim. No one is going to give their child a drink. No one's going to go to the store to buy a bell to give their child a drink, unless you're trying to do a demonstration on functional fixedness. You're going to go and buy a sippy cup or a little cup or a big cup. Therefore, our Gemara establishes, or actually now the Gemara has a challenge, seemingly. How could Rabbi Yochanan consider that the drinking from an inbal is from a bell without its inbal is considered an effective use if that's totally beyond the concept of what such a keli should be used for? So let's see what the Gemara is going to answer. The Gemara says, I think we're going to stop here. No, we're going to read this line, but we're going to come back tomorrow and revisit it. Epoch Kamaisa. Switch the names around. Actually, my charger fell out, and we're going to die in a minute. Epoch Kamaisa. Swap around the name, so it turns out that Rabbi Yochanan believes in functional fixedness, and Rabbi Yosi does not believe in functional fixedness. So the Gemara says, Epoch Kamaisa. So the Gemara says, Epoch Kamaisa, Epoch Basraisa. Why did you reverse the comment of Rabbi Yochanan who says that a bell can be used for drinking? Why don't you reverse the second statement? Oh no, I'm sorry. I think I explained that to you wrong. Hold on. Epoch Kamaisa means that Rabbi Yochanan now is the one who says that you must only use it for a common function. I said it wrong previously. And Rabbi Yossi is the one who says functional fixedness, you could drink out of a bell even if the inbal is missing. The Gemara is going to challenge and say, hold on. We have two statements of Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yossi. You swap the authors in the first teaching, meaning that Rabbi Yochanan no longer says you can drink out of the bell. Why don't you just fix or alter the second teaching, which is Rabbi Yochanan saying that he doesn't believe in functional fixedness. And so the Gemara is going to explain that tomorrow. So let me give a fast recap. I know today, as yesterday, was a highly technical Gemara, but I hope we got something out of it. Again, I think this is the classic case that the doctor wanted us to have about functional fixedness. And we're talking about inbells. We're talking about a bell losing its tongue. And the question was, we had a teaching that says that a bell without its tongue can still remain a keli. And we said, hold on. How could it remain a keli? Isn't it broken? And we know that stuff that's broken and unable to be used is no longer a keli. And so we spent a little bit of time figuring out with certain proposed ideas that were rejected, and maybe even though they're not connected because it can be fixed, it's still considered a keli. The Gemara doesn't seem to really like that. Even an attached vessel, which is not being used, is considered detached. So the Gemara now asked us to reimagine what a bell is being used for. Initially, we said a bell. Well, two opinions. Either a bell can be used to make the sound when you bang it into an external inbal. You'll smash it against the vessel or something. That was the first answer. And then the second opinion was that you'll use the bell as a cup. And that led us into a discussion of functional fixedness. Does Rabbi Yochanan really support functional fixedness? The Gemara initially says yes, but the Gemara challenges that by a second teaching. Rabbi Yochanan rejects functional fixedness, and based on that challenge, we end up changing the two names. Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yossi swap their opinions. Rabbi Yochanan becomes, at this point, the opinion that says that a bell can be used to bang against another vessel, and Rabbi Yossi is the one who says you can say l'chaim or let your child drink out of a bell. Today's Gemara, short but sweet. We turn the page from Nun Ches Amud Beis. Hold on. We turn the page from Nun Ches Amud Beis to Nun Tes Amud Aleph. That concludes today's shir, which was dedicated to L'schus, our newest member of our community, Yaakov Rafael Menachem Harosh. Reb Beryl Schuster, b'vakasha. Go ahead.
A fast question. The scissors would be a more interesting case because each of the blades can be used as a knife very easily.
It would be an interesting case, but it's not what our Gemara is talking about. It's only brought in parenthetically because the Gemara is really talking here and really curious here about a bell, not la bell.
Yeah, but what do we do? What do we do with something that each part of the combined thing could serve a purpose?
So we basically perceive it. We go the chumrah. That was what the Gemara that we learned earlier and that was quoted today. We consider it attached to be susceptible for tumah d'Rabbanan, and we consider it detached for the purposes of purification. So that's that. I know that wasn't a full.
Okay, you can cut it. You can cut it short. It's okay if you cut it short.
Gentlemen, I want to thank you for your indulgence, allowing us to start late and allowing me to rush through today's Gemara. I hope you found it interesting. I think the doctor, at least Dr. Hammer, appreciated it. And now next time you'll talk about functional fixedness, you'll be able to present this example. And I want to thank you for giving us this vessel. And Yosef, we dedicated today's learning for your new son, Yaakov Rafael Menachem. All right, have a wonderful day, folks. And we all wish Yosef, the whole shir wishes you a mazel tov.
Amen. Thank you.
Amen.
I still believe that bell is a musical instrument.
Shalom Bear, are you doing Chumash today? All right, yes. Stand by. You can rejoin the link once I end it. And Shalom Bear, he might take a minute or two to get on just because of the festivities, but he'll be on today for the Chumash. Have a wonderful day. Shkoyach.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.